For a good number of years, when looking on the internet trying to find some information about my digital stereo 917 PC, Google would often return no results. However, that started to change in May of 2023 when somebody posted on the Vogons forums asking for some more information. Now, the only thing that I'd ever found was a service manual from a company in Holland and not really any other information, so I was quite interested in this post and followed it. I'd had a saved eBay search for about 9 years trying to find this particular model of machine, and finally in February of 2023 that saved search matched an item. So I've already gone over in the unboxing video just exactly how the machine got to me, so I'm not going to go over it in much detail again other than to say it was in California, I got it shipped to my friend who lived in Virginia, and then finally in about the end of October last year it got shipped to me in the UK. However, between May and when the machine actually got to me, I was scrolling through Instagram one day and lo and behold a picture caught my eye. It was indeed a digital Starion. Now, as I mentioned, I've searched for years for information about this machine and could never really find anything, so I couldn't quite believe my luck when I came across this picture on Instagram. So I immediately direct messaged the person. I asked if we could sit down on camera and have a quick, perhaps 15-minute chat about the PC. Now, that initial 15 minutes turned out to be an hour and a half conversation, and to be honest it could have gone on much longer. So who was this other person that had a unicorn PC just like me? His name is Matt. He has his own YouTube channel, Polymatt, which I'll link in the description below. I highly recommend you go and check it out because his work is awesome. So without further ado, let's start the chat. Right after this message from PCBWay. Our good friends over at PCBWay have kindly sponsored this video. PCBWay offers a variety of services from PCB production and assembly to 3D printing in various materials, injection moulded plastics and even sheet metal fabrication. They offer a very professional and high quality service for extremely reasonable prices. Check out a link to their website in the description below. Matt, thank you so much for doing this, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
So I just wondered if you could tell me how you went about acquiring your Starion and which model number that you have.
Yeah, it's a great question. I've been looking for, well, I'll start back. The way that I got into retro tech was to try to kind of relive the experiences that I had back in the day, and it really kind of, it brought back a lot of memories and a lot of like really exciting things. And so I wanted to first acquire the technology, like specifically the computer that I had when I was a very young kid growing up, and then my own first computer growing up, which happened to be the digital Starion. And but the problem is that I couldn't remember the brand and I couldn't remember the model. And so it's literally been a couple of years where I haven't been searching for a deck and I haven't been searching for a Starion. I've just kind of kept my eye out on like different vintage computer cases to see if they look familiar. And so it's been a couple of years since I started really looking in earnest, and I was browsing eBay, and all of a sudden it was just there, right? And all the memories came flooding back. When I was younger, my family and I had an Apple II, which was probably the first real machine that I started playing around with. A little bit older, I remember my mother bought a compact classic Mac from the local school that was a used one. But my first computer that my father kind of went out to the store and bought me, which was incredible universe for anybody in the States. If you know it, it was a very short-lived, massive technology. It was just like it was a paradise. But we went out and we bought this computer. And so this was my first. So coming back to eBay, right? I saw it and I was like, oh my God. But I bid on it and I didn't get it. But
Ah,
the good
no.
news, I know it was crazy. It was like you have this thing, and like I'm not just going to put loads of money at it, but I really wanted it. So I put my cap as what I thought was reasonable, and I didn't get it. Um, but the good news is that I then knew the model and the brand, and that I could go. And so I put another saved search on eBay, and about 2, 3 months later, one popped up again. So the model number that I ended up picking up on eBay was a Starion 942. I didn't remember that model number as a kid, but what I did remember is that it was 133 megahertz with a 2 gigabyte hard drive.
Right.
That's
Okay.
those are the specs that I remembered. And so this 942 came up, and it looked a bit rough, but it didn't look like it had been damaged, and so it looked like it just needed a bit of cleaning. And so I picked it up, got it back home, and it was 133 megahertz. It was a 2 gig. Kind of old. I think it was a Caviar hard drive, and I cleaned it up, and it turned out great. And I've just been playing around with it and super happy ever since.
So which is the one that you had to buy another motherboard for? Is that the one, or was that another one?
It was this one. And so what I had found was that no hard drives worked. At first, I knew that the old spinning rust hard drive in there just wasn't gonna. It probably wasn't long for this world. It was making some pretty nasty sounds. But after I replaced it with a very similar model drive that I tested and I knew worked with similar capacity, I spent a long time troubleshooting and trying to figure it out. Is it the settings? Because the BIOS in these things is absolutely rough. And it is incredibly limiting. And at this point, I hadn't looked up the limitations of the IDE controller, but when I started digging into it, I found out that this IDE controller specifically was prone to failure. And so I I tested a couple of known good drives with the appropriate capacities, and it just wouldn't recognize them. It wouldn't work. It would give me very strange errors. I actually got a hard drive recognized, but in formatting, it was a CF to IDE card. In formatting, it just started to error out big time. And so I again go back on eBay, put this thing back in the garage, go back on eBay and look for a new motherboard. And one ended up coming up. It was a different model number Starion, the way that it was listed, but the board was the exact same model number, same CPU even. So now I've got a backup, but I plugged in the CF to IDE. The the BIOS picked it up. It read it as a 1024 megabyte capacity, which was strange because it was a 2 gig CF to IDE. It was a 2 gig compact flash card, but when it booted into Windows, which I got it formatted, everything worked, and it booted into Windows, Windows read it as 2 gigs, which was really interesting. So even to this day, the BIOS still reads it as a 1024 meg capacity, but Windows sees it as 2 gigs, which I don't even know how that happens.
No, I do. I mean, I've since found. I mean, I'm so glad that I found out about the problems with the IDE controller now that I'm an adult. Because as a kid, I mean, there was a 4.3 gigabyte hard drive in. There's a what there used to be a store here called PC World. By the door, I remember there was a 4.3 gig hard drive, and it was £170, and this was like 1997, perhaps 1996. And I was like, right, I'm going to save up all my Christmas money and all my birthday money, and I'm going to buy one of these hard drives because it's 4.3 gigabytes. It's huge. And I would have been devastated had I got home, plugged that drive in, and found that it would only see 2.1 gigs of it. But yeah, I've also there is the motherboard,
That's it.
and there is the IDE controller, and apparently, according to the RMC Discord server, some people in there have really been helping me out. Apparently, it's an atrocious IDE.
Yeah, I've come to know that as well. Yeah.
But I've also been having some problems because I've been trying to drag this machine kicking and screaming into the 21st century, and
Yeah.
it's not having it. It firmly wants to stay in the 90s.
Honestly, that's kind of got to be kind of nice, right? Like I've got some Windows X, I've got a Windows XP machine and a Windows 98 machine that I have just absolutely blown it out, right? Like 32 gig hard drives and, like compact flash stuff and, like network cards. But this thing, because it is so resistant, I kind of want to just keep it classic, right? Like I'm gonna put a 28.8 modem in it, and I've got a solution to actually get that onto my Wi-Fi using the 28.8 modem.
Do you have the modem? Do you have the original modem?
It is I don't know if it's original, but it is a 28.8. It is a Creative Blaster. It's a modem blaster.
If you want authenticity, I can send you the 28.8 Rockwell one that I pulled out of mine.
Oh,
You're welcome to have it.
Rockwells are nice. They were a really solid kind of generic brand. But yeah, that might be interesting. I might take you up on that.
I've come to the conclusion too that I think that it's going to be. I was kind of hoping that it was going to be the perfect PC for, the perfect Pentium 100 PC for me. That it was going to be, I was going to put this graphics card in it, I was going to have this network card in it, and I bought an airport express router that I can connect and, bridge the Wi-Fi with Ethernet and get it on the internet. And yeah, it's not happy, and I think I'm just going to stick with floppy disks and CD-ROMs, and don't get me wrong, I'm pleased that I have it because I've been after it for such a long time. I don't know if you remember the story that I told you about how I came across our original Starion. Basically, my dad was in the military. We lived in Germany. There was a military base not too far away. There was a store on the military base, which was an American public exchange, and in there they had Levi's, and we could have Welch's and drinks, and we could get a case of Dr. Pepper and that kind of stuff. Just the things that you couldn't get normally in Europe. And one day my dad was browsing. They had a PC. It seemed like a reasonable deal, so he bought it, and that was our first PC, because before that we had a Macintosh LC475. Before that, we had an Atari 800, and my dad got into Macs because he worked on a surface-to-air missile system because he was in the Air Force, and he basically had to create the training manuals for the soldiers so they could operate this surface-to-air missile system. And he wanted to be able to draw the interface and the buttons and all that kind of stuff, and a PC just wouldn't cut it. So he managed to get a Macintosh SE, and he did all the desktop publishing. Basically, he drew all the manuals and which buttons that you had to press, and that was then used for the soldiers to be able to operate this machinery. So that was how we got our first machine, and that's why in Europe, at least, I don't know of anybody other than seeing it on LGR, that little tiny snippet whilst he was talking about an AST Advantage. There was a little bar across the bottom, and I'm like, Starion!
It's so I didn't know anybody with one either, right? And if you look at the archive.org and you go through there, you can't find them either, right? And I think it's this one of the same clippings that Clint had that he pulled up, because it's sitting right next to an AST. I haven't done a ton of research, but it doesn't seem like DEC really or digital really had a consumer line for very long. It didn't seem like they were that popular, that they weren't in advertising that much. I didn't know anybody, never ran across anybody that had one. It seemed like not a budget machine, but not a high-end machine or not a high-end line. Yeah.
Interestingly, I have a coworker. Sorry to butt in there. My coworker, I put a picture on Instagram or something, and he said, "Oh, that looks like some of the DEC machines that I used to have to look after." And I was like, I didn't even think DEC released machines over here. So we need to have a sit down and figure out what machines that were over here, because I didn't think DEC had any consumer machines in the UK, or at least Europe, the UK at all. So I'm fascinated to find that out.
Yeah, same. I mean, I was going to do a video on it, but I really didn't. I didn't end up filming kind of the whole repair or troubleshooting process or anything like that. So I really didn't get footage of cleaning it up or anything. But some of the videos that I do really aren't about the archaeology of it, right? I don't kind of talk through things, and so it really wouldn't fit the channel. But I am very interested to know how, right? Like, yeah, how many of these things were actually sold? Like, where were they sold? Where were they pushed?
I would love to know that. Also, interestingly, before I got mine shipped back to the UK, I did find a service manual for it, which, I mean, I've often typed into Google Digital Starion 917, or Digital Starion at least, very little comes up. Starion seems to also be it's a Mitsubishi car or something. So I don't know if you've noticed, but some of the stuff that comes back is about cars, and I was like, no, it's not that. But there's a company, I think it's a Dutch company. They had the service manual. So of course I downloaded it and I was reading it, but it turns out the service manual is wrong because when mine arrived, the Dallas clock battery was dead. So, I mean, obviously it's like, 30-year-old machine.
Those things are a nightmare. Yeah.
Well, I'm really pleased that it's socketed. So I took the whole machine to pieces because I wanted to clean it because it was absolutely filthy and there was some kind of like bug nest or something in there. So as I pulled everything to pieces, I had access to the Dallas battery, and I was like, brilliant. And I thought, I have another motherboard. It's a Pentium. Well, at the moment it's got a Pentium 166 in, but that it's soldered to the motherboard, and I'm not looking forward to having to replace that one. But this one, I was really pleased that it is socketed. And I don't know about you, but I had some boot problems with mine with the dead Dallas clock battery. It would post and then it would say starting and then it would just freeze and it wouldn't actually get any further. So
Same. But it was really interesting because I've run across a few boards of the era that had those Dallas chips. They were the all-in-one kind of like, potted clocks that were pretty common. But it was surprising to me that it was socketed. I had originally thought that it was a repair job, right? Somebody had already tried to pull the clock and replace it, and then just for ease of use, the same way I would have done, being like, well, somebody in the future is going to have to replace this too, so I'm going to go ahead and put a socket in. But after I got the second motherboard, that one was socketed too, and I was like, wow, this actually might be a thing that digital did, which is kind of interesting.
well, the service manual that I mentioned, when I said it was wrong, it says that you put the clock battery in upside down. And I was all excited because I got some supposedly new old stock. I mean, these things haven't been made for at least 20 years as far as I know, but I put the clock battery in and it was still doing bizarre things and it kept freezing and I was quite disappointed. I thought, if I spent all this money on a lemon? And then I just thought, let me put the old clock battery back in. And I put it in and it was still misbehaving. And I thought, well, it was kind of working. It was doing more than it was doing when I swapped the battery. So I thought, I wonder if the battery's in upside down. So I swapped it and then immediately it booted. So I then put the other clock battery, the new old stock one, and it's been fine ever since. So don't always trust the service manuals.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't read the service manual to do it. I trust the I trust the silk screen on the board itself, right? Because you're going to have like a little indentation, on where it's supposed to be oriented. And I actually got a modern replacement too. So it runs off of a CR1220, little tiny kind of replaceable watch cell, coin cell type battery. And so you socket the kind of the board in, and then you put in that CR1220 in it, and it works. It works great.
Yeah, I did look at those, but for some reason, importing them into the UK, they're horrendously expensive. They're sort of 25, £30, and I've just spent £475 importing the machine. So, I mean, that's my own fault because it was in California, and it was. I mean, we made an offer. I think it was listed for 200 or $300, and we made an offer for 250, and he accepted, and it was $100 shipping from California to Virginia, and then it sat in my friend's house for like, well, since February of this year. I think the cat used it as a bed, and then finally we got it
It's good.
shipped over here. So that was another
Yeah.
like over £100. Then I had to pay import duty on top of that. So then it's just been like, it's not worth £500 at all in terms of the components, but to me, it is. I wanted it, so it's
Same.
here.
Yep. Same. What kind of monitor did you end up buying with your original one? Do you remember?
We had the now this is interesting because we had the 17-inch monitor that matched the base unit, I cannot find a picture. Even on that advertisement, it doesn't look the same as the one that we had. But you know the top case, you have the slots, the lines in the that was along the back, and it reminded me of like an Apple, like an LC monitor that kind of had those lines that match the top of the pizza box case. Um, I don't know what happened to that one, but when I do remember I had a second digital monitor, and this one supported all kinds of weird resolutions. It was great, and it had a little flip down door that I saw a picture of just recently on Instagram actually. Um, I'll have to find it and send you a link to it. But yeah, the original one we had, it was deck branded.
See, that's interesting because I remember very specifically that when my dad and I went to go, shop around and ultimately buy this PC, the salesperson, it was a question my dad had because he didn't know much about computers. Is, well, do you have to get the matching monitor? And the sales guy said, no, you don't. And so my dad ended up buying another one, and I don't remember. It was probably like something that was a bit cheaper at the time because the I remember the PC being about $1,000 at the time, which was incredibly expensive.
Well, I remember our PC being $1,799, and the monitor I think was an extra thousand on top of that.
Wow.
I think that was right because we bought, well, I say we, my dad, he bought the PC, he bought the monitor. It came with the JBL speakers. It didn't come with the subwoofer. Um, and then I remember the speakers because they had a US power adapter, and obviously we're in Europe and we use 220, so we had to have a 220 to 110 step down transformer. And after like half an hour of that being on, that used to buzz, so we uh,
Oh yeah.
we had to turn that off.
Maybe I was misremembering that because even looking at the because it was the year or maybe the year after it came out that we actually bought it because I remember it being 95 or 96, and so maybe it was the monitor that cost $1,000, but I just remember that kind of number sticking in my head. But yeah, same. We got the speakers that came with it, the JBLs, which I hate to admit I was able to find some on eBay, and I paid almost as much for those speakers as I did for the computer itself.
Oh my god, do they sound all right
Yeah.
still?
Terrible. They sound terrible. I'm going to need to need to crack them open, and unfortunately, it's they're they seem like they're glued. There's no screws accessible anywhere.
Even under the rubber feet at the bottom?
There's well, mine, the ones that I at least bought don't have rubber feet. They may have had a place where they once were, but yeah, I've looked all over. I've tried popping out the grill of the speaker to say maybe there's something there, but it just looks like these things were just they feel they don't feel cheap. I will say that they are JBLs and they were very nice speakers at the time.
I have this, right, so I had the speakers for a long time after I had the machine. This was my first iMac.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, yeah.
They were fantastic speakers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The that pair is down on my workbench in the garage right now, waiting for me to crack them open at the after the holidays. Yeah, I remember those very, very well. And I hadn't remembered those when I was kind of searching for the original computer, but once I saw that article from PC, I think it was PC World magazine, it had those speakers sitting right there, and it just kind of yeah, same thing. It kind of brought back a ton of memories. So what are your what are your plans for it? What are your plans for your deck now? Understanding its limitations now.
Yeah, so I wanted to. I was thinking about what cards were in the machine to start off with, and I remember having horrendous problems with the audio card. So I would install DirectX 3 off from a CD for a terrible game called Bug. It's so stupid, but it was like one of the first 3D games that I had, and I had a demo of it. And every time I installed the demo, because it installed DirectX, it would wipe out the audio driver. So the only thing I could do, because it came with a master restore CD, there was no driver CD for the audio. I had to wipe the machine and start again. But then I'd forget and I'd install another piece of software and DirectX would be installed and my audio would stop again. So I decided that this time I would get rid of the ESS audio card and I would go and have a Sound Blaster 16, something really basic that is supported by most DOS games. Because most of the games that I had were for DOS. You know, I had Transport Tycoon, SimCity 2000. I don't need the modem. I took the modem out. I was going to put a network card in. I was going to put a TV card in. I was going to hook up my Nintendo Entertainment System to it, so I didn't have to have a monitor, a TV, an old style TV that would work with it. But it's too slow for the TV card. I put USB in it, but I felt a bit, yeah, it's too new. I had the PC, and I remember reading. I used to go at the weekend with my allowance. I would go and buy computer magazines, and in one of the computer magazines, it was talking about the upcoming USB, and I was like, that'll never take off. That's stupid. I never had an intention to put a USB card in the PC in the deck, and I only put it in there because the TV card didn't work. And now that the IDE, I've got problems with the IDE controller, I was thinking about putting a PCI IDE controller.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to put Windows on, put all my favorite old games on, and just play with it, really.
No, that's good. I think mine came with the card that I eventually ended up upgrading to, which was it wasn't very powerful, but it was like a 2 meg. Oh God, I can't even remember what it is right now. But it was a very kind of basic card, but having a dedicated video card was huge back then, right? And so I've got a video card in there. I've got mine came with a Sound Blaster 16, which I did end up buying when I was a kid. It had a modem blaster, and then there was I ended up there's a guy that it's a fantastic. I love this community so much. There was a guy that recreated an audio card that emulates a Roland MT401 Gravis ultrasound and an AdLib card with an OPL2 chip.
This isn't the one with the Pico
Yeah,
Raspberry Pi on, is
it's
it?
called the Pico Gus, which he's now it still uses the Raspberry Pi chip, but you don't have to actually put your own Pi in it anymore. He just kind of had a bunch of stock of new ones. And it's funny because I ordered one, and when it came, it had a note being like, "Hey, I love your stuff." And I was like, I still find it super weird when people recognize either my name or my work and things like that. But it was pretty cool. So then I started conversing with the guy, and he's like, "Yeah, you were my first order from this batch of batch of cards because I had signed up for." But so I put it in, and the interesting thing is I had to leave the Sound Blaster in because this card doesn't have Sound Blaster support, and in order to switch emulation modes, you need to upload new firmware into it. But the cool thing that he's done is that you can actually upload firmware in DOS. You don't have to like plug it into a modern computer or USB or anything like that. And so it's literally just you can build it into your auto exec and kind of have a little menu to do it for you. And so I've got that card and the original Sound Blaster 16 in it. And man, I've just been reliving old games and playing mostly with the Gravis mod in that card, which sounds fantastic. It's just nostalgia in a box.
See, I never really, coming from a Mac to a PC was like, I didn't understand. First of all, at school, because I was 14, I think, when we got the PC, I was at school in Germany. And I didn't understand why there was a black screen to get the mouse to work. I had to type the word win. That made no sense to me. Until somebody explained that it was Windows. I'm like, of course it's Windows. You have a mouse with Windows. I didn't understand. But I had lots of issues with. So the audio card that was in the deck was an ESS 1688 plug and play audio drive. That was the one that was in our machine, and apparently it's well regarded with good Sound Blaster emulation. But I didn't understand what that was when I was a kid. When I rebooted into DOS, sometimes the audio would work, sometimes it didn't. Majority of the time, it didn't. And I'm having to learn about all this stuff as I'm older because I've carried on being a Mac user, and I really haven't had any experience with DOS and drivers and things. So
I just remember fighting with it, right? Because it was not easy back in the day. All I knew,
it's not easy to this day with all the knowledge.
I know exactly from all that we've learned or haven't learned and all that's out there, it's still not easy. But it's funny because I knew that like if you bought a new card, it would sound better or do more things or make your PC run faster, which that was the majority of it, is faster and better. But then there was this whole thing about conflicting conflicting resources, as Windows calls it, right? I had zero idea what like DMA and IRQ was, but I knew enough to know that if you had that, like, two cards couldn't have any of those same numbers, right? I figured that much out. And so yeah, I mean, just troubleshooting was it start I remember LGR did a video where he actually talks through, I think it was is either his ad lib video or his Gravis ultrasound video. He talks through having one game that he really wanted to play, and like all you do is, before, when you install the game in a DOS, you'd go into setup first, right, to configure your mouse and keyboard, but most importantly your sound. And then there's a list of like supported card types, and then I had no idea what those were, same as he, right? And you just try the different ones until something worked. And that's all that you knew, right? You were just like, well, maybe this. And so, it was, but there was still no connection between, oh, this sound card supports this type of driver and this is what I'm select. There was no kind of recognition or knowledge of that. You were just trying shit till it worked, you know?
Yeah, no, I asked. So whilst I was waiting for the deck to be shipped over here, I was like, okay, so here are my top five games that I used to play in DOS. So there was a game called Screamer. There was a game called um, Big Red Racing. There was another game called Transport Tycoon. Obviously SimCity 2000, and then The Lion King. And the only reason why I wanted The Lion King was because my friend had a Mega Drive, or a Genesis as you guys call them, and he could play, you know, with Simba, and it looked really good, and the music was, because it was that time where The Lion King was out, and it was really cool.
Yeah, it was a good platformer. That was a good game.
Well, that's one of my. I bought it and I played the hell out of it. So I did. Before the PC arrived, I asked on the Discord, the RMC Discord channel. I said, "Hey guys, look, I want a basic sound card that's going to work uh, with most of the games that I want to play. Um, could 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 somebody make a recommendation? It has to be ISA because the riser card has four ISA slots and two PCI.
Yep.
And what I was planning on doing was, on the motherboard, there's a 1 meg S3 Trio 32, I think. Uh, what Talking about the monitors, what used to make me laugh was the monitor would support like 1024 by 768, but we could have it in 256 colors because the graphics card on board was terrible.
Yep.
Um, so I had some money for Christmas one year, and I went to PC World, and they had like a bargain basement bin kind of thing, and I was like, having a look through, and I came across a Creative Labs 3D Blaster 4 meg PCI graphics card, and it was £50. I'm like, I'm having that. So I put that in my machine, and then found out that none of the games that I played supported it.
Oh no.
And the only thing that really it accelerated was, and you're gonna laugh at this, solitaire. When you when you get all the cards and
Yeah.
they start bouncing
The
down.
waterfall. Yeah.
So before it was like bored, 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 and with the new graphics card it was like pop, 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 pop. But I could get the higher resolutions with the higher color depth, so that was all that mattered really.
Yeah, the games that I remember, some of the ones that stand out were Tomb Raider. But I needed a graphics card for that, and that was a real pain to get working, I remember, because it has this like custom, very specific video mode. Because I remember I remember not understanding how it was doing what it was doing, because when you first load the game, it switches over into this high resolution, high color video mode just for the still like splash image, right? And then it goes back into like a lower resolution, like a 640 by 480 with like the actual 3D kind of stuff. And it was, I remember that like when like before I had a video card, I would launch the game and it would just crash at that screen, and my monitor would flicker, the game would crash, and it would quit back to DOS. Um, that one I remember full throttle, a really good Lucasfilm. It wasn't FMV, but it was more along the lines of like a Monkey Island game where it was a point and click adventure. I loved that game. The cutscenes were incredible, and then Duke 3D, right? Doom and Duke 3D were the two that I know it's cliche, but man, I loved those games. I played through all of it.
I'm going to make you laugh now. Doom freaked me out as a kid.
Oh yeah,
I couldn't play it because the music freaked me out. So funny enough, it's on my list of my least favorite DOS games because I enjoy it now.
yeah.
I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at most video games, to be perfectly honest. But the music and the noises, I could, like, I'm in a room now with just two small lights on, but I had to have all the lights on, and I had to have the sound down when I was playing it because it freaked me out so much.
I would intentionally, because I think when I was a kid, I would like that kind of stuff. So I would intentionally like wait till late at night, turn off the lights, and then plug in some Doom, and yeah, and the bass on those speakers is actually really good. And so like the ambiance and the characters, and then I actually got, because I was always kind of into figuring out how stuff works. So I got Doom Ed, which was the level editor. Um, and really started just doing my own levels and figuring that out, and and yeah, just kind of just really digging in on that side of it. But man, yeah, that was, yeah, like I think like many people, everybody experienced Doom and some, at some point. If you ever cross somebody that said they didn't at least like had a friend that played it or anything, like they're probably an alien. They're lying. They're not from this world.
Yeah, and I try and get Doom working on anything,
Well,
like it's a mission.
it's
Like,
so, and you can, right? Like you can get it working on there. Many people have proven that, right? It's the opposite of crisis, right?
will it Doom? Of course it will.
Of course it'll do.
So, what kind of repairs other than the motherboard did you have to do? Was it just a bit dirty, or did you have any like damage to the case? Or
No, really no repairs, which is new for me, because I usually buy some pretty rough stuff, because I have, I like doing that kind of thing. But this thing came after I figured out the whole IDE thing, and yeah, this thing came pretty well preserved. Wasn't very dusty inside, but I did the same thing. I took it all out. I even dismantled the power supply, checked all the caps. I bathe all of the PCBs in IPA, and just made sure that thing was absolutely pristine.
I was really surprised actually because the inside of the case was filthy. The top of the floppy drive was horrendous. The top of the optical drive was really
Yeah,
bad.
same.
Like I said, there was some kind of bug haven in there. It was really rough. But the motherboard was pristine because it's vertically mounted. There was very little dust on it. The riser card for the PCI and the ISA
Yeah.
slots, that's filthy.
Yep.
And I gave that a bath in IPA. But the rest of it, I was really surprised actually.
Yeah. Did yours come with the 2-speed CD-ROM drive too?
No, mine has a quad speed.
My Oh no, you're right. Yeah, mine has quad speed too. That's right.
I'm interested. Does your quad speed optical drive make a funny noise?
In general, or when ejecting or putting it back in?
Like when it's reading a CD, and it's not all CDs. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find a video because I did want to send to my friend. So I call it slipping. I used to as a kid anyway.
Oh.
I would put a CD in, it would spin it up, and then it would go, "Urgh," and then it would slow down, and then it would spin up again and go, "Urgh."
Yeah, I have familiarity with that noise, but this one that I got does not do it, thankfully.
This one here.
Oh wow. That literally sounds like grinding gears.
Yeah, it's not though. It's the CD spinning too fast. Be- because it will slow down, and then it will speed up, and then it will carry on reading, and then perhaps it will try and read it faster at like 4x instead of like 2x or something, and then the CD will slip. And that's the second machine. Because I originally, as a kid, I did something. I don't know what it was, but I thought I'd broken the optical drive because after that, I'm sure it used to make that noise. And then this deck, when that arrived, and I put it's only certain CDs, and you put them in, and it makes this noise, but it makes the installation of anything twice as slow because it has to slow down and then spin the drive up again and try and read, and then it might fail and it will slow down, and it takes forever.
That might be that might be a mechanical protection. Like if it detects a fault or a slip or something that it doesn't like, right? It it'll slow down and then kind of try it again. Or maybe it's just like the data read, like error correction.
If you listen to it carefully, but then after that it's fine for a little bit. But
Oh, that sounds horrific.
it does, and as a kid I thought I'd bug the machine. I was really worried about it, and of course I didn't tell anyone. And I was like, just if I don't tell
Oh no.
anyone, then you know. But no, two machines now, so I assume that it's just a terrible. I think it's a Mitsumi optical
Yep.
drive.
Didn't seem very yeah, it didn't seem too special.
Yeah, so mine unfortunately arrived with a bit of damage, a bit of shipping damage.
Yeah, you sent me some photos. It looks like you did a pretty good job repairing that.
Yeah, it's at certain angles you can tell that I've repaired it, um, but for the most part, I'm quite pleased with the way it turned out. The case was quite badly yellowed. That was when it arrived.
Yeah. Oof.
So luckily the parts were inside the little pieces of plastic, and I managed just to super glue them in place. I don't know if you can see on that picture. I'll probably have to send it to you. There is a little line just
Oh yeah. Can barely see it. Yep.
like I said, at certain angles you can see it, but it's I'd rather there be that than a hole in it.
I did. The front case, and then I took off the front plates and drawer of the CD drive and the front plate of the floppy. Um, I actually I actually ended up damaging the front plate of the floppy, which is super common because when you try to take off those little doors, the little tiny doors have two pegs on either side that are just tiny, tiny little bits of plastic, and plastic degrades over time, and so this thing just kind of popped off. But I've done it before, so luckily I was able to repair it, and it's literally I just heated the thing up with a uh, a heat gun, and well, actually it was with a I kind of used pliers with a soldering iron and a paper clip, and if you insert a little tiny piece of paper clip into that plastic or to replace the little peg, it's far more stable than it ever was before, and it looks perfect because you can't even see that part.
I was half tempted to do that because I don't know how durable the super glue will be on the repair. So I was thinking of getting some metal and heating it up behind and just pushing it in just to give it a little bit of support. But
Yep.
it's not going anywhere other than between one room and another.
The Are you talking about the front case part?
Yeah,
Oh, I don't think you'll need any reinforcement. There's no stress that happens on those things. That had to look like an impact.
and interestingly, the floppy and the optical drive were the original color.
Wow. Yeah, that is interesting. Mine were the good news is that they were the same color as the case. So when I retrobrighted them, and some plastics take to retrobrighting better than others. Um, and I use these days I use vapor brighting. So I put a pool of the
Hydrogen
the
peroxide.
developer hydrogen peroxide on the bottom of a large plastic bin. But then I have these metal risers. So I put the case over those and then I put the lid on it to seal it and set that out in the sun so it doesn't get direct. It's not soaking in the hydrogen peroxide, but it's still getting the chemical effect. And I have never had anything, with that weird marbling or any kind of artifacts from that.
So I've done a whole bunch of keyboards, and I prefer the submersion. Apart from, I had the Apple adjustable keyboard, and I had left it, and I think it floated to the top for about. It was only about a half hour, but I ended up with a line across. That's the only time that the submersion method I've done has not worked out great. But the front of mine, because I took mine off and I submerged it,
That's
and
perfect.
it was going for like 10 hours because it's winter time now. We don't have any sun, and I have a 40-watt UV LED light thing. So I bought just like a storage bin for under the bed, and I cut a hole in the top, and I filled it full of hydrogen peroxide, and I put the light on, and I just left it for like 10 hours. And I kept periodically going back and having a look. But I'm really pleased with how it turned out.
Yeah,
It
it looks great.
matches perfect. The logo actually. Did you poke the case? Yeah.
I do. I always take those off. I've learned many times that sometimes those have the propensity to fade. I also remove stickers too, which first is pretty harrowing, right? To do that, but I've found some good methods to do it that'll actually, if you use denatured alcohol or denatured mineral spirits, um, you can get them to come free with pretty little effort. And if you let them dry out, they'll retain quite a bit of their original stickiness. And so I found that that works really well for stickers.
What I did was I used a knife because where the Intel Inside logo at the bottom is, I just used a knife just to lift it up, and then I gently peel it off. But I wasn't too worried about it because there's another guy in the US that sells new old stock case stickers.
Yeah.
So I bought the Intel Inside case sticker just in case, and then I also bought the little silver one with Intel Inside with MMX technology. But no, I was quite pleased that when I peeled it off, it still was quite sticky, and I could reuse the original one. So I still have a spare one. That's kind of cool.
It's crazy to think that, like, back back in the day, for example, that sticker that's on the front of yours, the 911 model number and kind of all the specs and things like that, that would be 100% the first thing to go after I got it home. But today, like, you we want those things, and we get.
I hadn't thought about that until, I mean, I didn't even know I had it because, so the guy that I managed to get the machine shipped to in Virginia, he's a friend of mine called Blake Spot. He has a thing called the Byte Cellar. So in his basement, he has like 50 old retro machines. They're all set up, all have monitors. He's got like an Apple Lisa, and he's got a RISC OS machine, and he's got this machine, and he's got that machine, and I've known him for years through IRC, through Internet Relay Chat, and then subsequently Facebook, and he's always up for helping get stuff to the UK. He's been like instrumental in getting this machine to me, so I can't thank him enough.
That's perfect.
It was probably like 2 years ago. My eBay search went ding, 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 and I'm like, oh, it's found a story on something. And it was the original manual, the original installer CD, the master like CD, the boot floppy. And I thought, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll buy that and I'll restore it into a VM, and then I can have a poke around all the software. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's a BIOS check that it does. So it won't restore on another machine, which I hadn't really thought about. And I tried for months to try and like hack this to try and work out a way around it. In the paper envelope that has the CD and the floppy in, on the one side that I hadn't really looked at was the sticker for the drive bay, and I was like, no, that can't. I can't have the sticker. That's so
amazing.
cool. So when I got this, I know it's not the same as because mine was a 917 and this is 911, which I think is quite funny because ring 911 and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I put it on, and it's the spec of it is almost identical. It's the only difference is the speed of the CPU. Ours is 100, or mine is 100, and this says 75. The rest of the specs are exactly the same.
It's amazes me how many models they must have come out with, and but how rare these things absolutely were. I mean, and again, I can't say that they're rare because I have no idea how many they made, but like if maybe they were just like just government issue, or maybe they were just like a very specific market, because again, nobody I know had these things. And even researching and buying just a load of electronics over the years, I've never seen one of these things come up before. I mean, it was amazing when I can't I can't remember how we actually started talking about it. I mean, maybe it was a post on Instagram that I made, or maybe it was a post, something that you posted. I can't even remember, but it was amazing because
You posted a picture of yours, and I, I was flicking through Instagram one day, and I was like, hang on a minute, no, that can't be. And I looked at the picture, and I'm like, oh my god, that's a Starion. And I messaged you, so excited about it because your machine is the only other one I've ever seen.
yep,
And I was like, I have to talk to this guy. We have to have a conversation.
yep, yeah, pretty incredible.
In the original manual with the CD, it came with the registration card. It came with the big poster that goes on the wall. It came with the mouse mat, the mouse pad.
Okay, so what does the mouse pad look like? Because I've been looking on eBay for a mouse pad, and a mouse. Actually, I just picked one up. I don't think it was the one that came with the Starion line, but it because there's a white one that I found with just a regular digital logo, and there's a black one. But I also remember because I also have the manual for this model of the Starion. Um, and it's very colorful. The logo and or the front cover is super colorful. So I'm curious.
Really? That's different.
Is it? Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Let me go grab that real quick.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's the mouse pad.
Yep, I absolutely remember that. That's amazing. Yeah, it's been, oh God, how 25, 30, some amount of insane years. I don't remember the sticker. That's incredible that you have it. I mean, it probably came with it and it was just tossed with all the other stuff. I remember I don't know if it was the Starion or my next computer, but I did get kind of a bargain bin copy of Dragon Natural Speaking that came with a one of those stand little kind of straw looking microphones that everybody had back in the day.
I've bought one of those to match mine.
That's good. And I remember um I, I remember that I was so excited about it. Oh yeah. Yep, that's it. And I remember I was so excited about it because you could talk to the computer and give it commands like start menu and it would open, or you could be like shut down and it would, or you could like just very like stupid things. I used it for about a week and then I never thought about it ever again because it was one of those things that was actually just ended up being a huge pain.
I was spoilt with the Mac. So the LC475 with System 7 or 7.5 that had text to speech, and that then also had the speakable commands and things.
Oh man, they had
So
speakable commands back. I have a Macintosh Portable, the one with the
oh, you
backlit.
don't
Yeah, it's
really?
it's beautiful. I did a full restore on it. It's amazing, and even that, right? System 6 even had text to speech. No, I was surprised that even old, like it was System 608, something like that. That because I like to get the operating systems of the year, of the year it was released, and so I remember installing things like Mosaic One on it and using the modem with my kind of setup in order to dial it up and get it online. To go to like Frog Find and things like that. But I remember trying it out, and yeah, even System 6 had the text to speech, which is, yeah, I mean, just playing around with that was incredible. I'm surprised that more games for the Mac didn't utilize that feature. Maybe they couldn't. I'm not quite sure. But you would think that instead of kind of packing audio files, they would really use that heavily. Oh wow, there's the monitor.
This is the second monitor. This isn't the original one. This was more white.
Okay.
The original one was, beige.
It makes a lot of sense that there were probably more digital monitors out there than the Starions because, you know, DEC was a huge, kind of custom commercial, not necessarily, I mean, I'm not sure if they actually made
They did. They
mainframes,
made the VAX.
but they were definitely more. Oh, that's right. They did make the VAX. Yeah. So yeah, it makes sense that a lot more monitors would be out there than these things.
So what OS do you have on yours then? If you like the original stuff,
Well, so I've got Windows 95 because that's what came on it when I got it. And I don't have the upgraded 95B. I don't even have the one with USB support on it because that wasn't what came out. I've been thinking about installing um, the I can't remember what it was called. It was Plus with that came with Internet Explorer. Yep, because Internet Explorer didn't originally come with 95. It was the internet, right? That was that. I don't think it was Internet Explorer then.
if you open it, it does actually say it's Internet Explorer, but it's Internet Explorer 2 that came with my Starion, because that was the
Okay.
first browser that I used. And then I had to upgrade pretty quickly to IE 302, I think it was, because web pages would hang. More complicated web pages would hang on IE2. But you are right, it is called the Internet on the desktop. Funny enough, it's called on Windows CE as well, because I'm obsessed with Windows CE. It's called the Internet on there as well, and it's the same icon. Did your deck ever go on the internet, or was it
I
another machine?
I don't remember. I think it may have because actually no, it did because I was on the internet even before my deck because I was dialing up to the local library with my Macintosh. I think it was an SE. It was a compact Mac, and I was dialing up and connecting to the internet via Telnet through my Mac, and so I know that I would have been doing the same thing as soon as I got my deck.
That's cool. Yeah, because the first I remember the first web page I ever visited in internet, well, the internet browser, which was yahoo.co.uk or yahoo.com, I think it probably was, because I don't think we had yahoo.co.uk back then. That was about 1990. I want to say the end of 1994. Perhaps it was mid 96.
Yeah, I mean, just great memories. It was a great machine. I'm really glad to have one. Just even though, even though, and I have gotten to appreciate the fact that it is never going to be like the ultimate upgraded beast that I would have wanted as a kid because you just can't. It is so you could completely max out the RAM. Although I've got 48 meg in mine now, and it loads so fast I can't even think about what 128 would do. It's inconceivable.
Do you know what happened to your original machine?
I don't. And it's for all of the home videos and photos that my family took over the years, right? Like it's all been lost to time. It probably got sold at some point. I'm trying to remember when. I can't remember the next machine that happened from that machine to like what my upgraded machine was and how I acquired it and anything like that. I do not have those memories anymore. And it's a mini tower. It's a horrendous machine to work inside. You have to, I mean, even let's just say, even if it was perfect condition and you wanted to change out that clock battery, you'd have to take the entire thing apart just to get to the clock battery.
Matt, I really appreciate your time, and I could talk to you for hours. Your content's great, by the way, and that last one that you did with the ThinkPad leather case was just next
I
level.
wasn't sure how that one was going to land. I'm still not sure how that's going to land. I've gotten a lot of feedback that like, no, it's better if you kind of keep your content consistent and not piss off your users. And I don't know. I'm just going to keep doing stuff that I like, and hopefully people like it too.
No, it's really cool. I mean, it's something I've never really paid much attention to, and then I ended up watching like 3 hours of people making AirPod cases out of leather and stuff. So
Yeah, it's fascinating. It is fascinating stuff. I like to learn things.
cool. Well, I shall leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will no doubt talk to you on Discord soon.
Absolutely. Yep. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Matt, so much. You take care.
Thanks, Rich. You too.